Night sits heavily on the Chersonese Peninsula. Wind comes off the Black Sea in long, salt-wet breaths, hissing across the low scrub and the shattered concrete of a coastal fort. Somewhere beneath the ground, a door clanks, a torch sputters, and boots descend into a tunnel that smells of oil, damp stone, and burned cordite. This is the beginning of a story told in two chambers. One is the 35th Coastal Battery of Sevastopol, a fortress of guns driven into rock on the southwestern edge of the city. The other lies across the water and east along the Crimean coast, in the underground labyrinth of the Adzhimushkay quarries near Kerch. Both are stories of soldiers and civilians forced below ground. One ends with evacuation and collapse amid the last days of the Siege of Sevastopol in June-July 1942. The other continues, out of sight, for months, approximately 170 days, under limestone ceilings and chalk dust, in darkness and thirst. Over time, the two stories became interwoven in memory and rumor. Our task is to separate them without pulling out the threads of human experience that bind them. We begin above ground. Sevastopol, autumn 1941. The German 11th Army, supported by Romanian units and heavy siege artillery, pushes into Crimea. By November, the approaches to Sevastopol are choked with trenches, anti-tank ditches, and minefields. The city is declared a fortress. Two concrete coastal batteries dominate its seaward flanks, the 30th to the north and the 35th to the south at Cape Chersonese. Each mounts 305mm guns in armored twin turrets, naval weapons emplaced to face the sea, now swiveled inland to meet an army. Beneath them, whole levels of galleries, magazines, machine rooms, barracks, and command posts honeycomb the rock. Steel doors, ventilation shafts, emergency tunnels that emerge into ravines and dry creek beds. The surface world is smashed by artillery and Stuka dives. The underground is a second city built to survive. The first assault fails in December. Winter comes, and with it attrition, bombardments, raids, counterattacks. In spring 1942, German command consolidates, dragging in railway guns and the giant siege mortars whose names survive in photographs: Mörser Karl, Dora. Each explosive impact chews into galleries and collapses ceilings. The underground is not a refuge from sound, it amplifies it. The battery crews learn to read tremors and dust, the whistle of incoming shells, the deep thud of something that moves Earth itself. June 7th, 1942. Operation Störfang. The final assault on Sevastopol begins with an artillery preparation unlike anything the defenders have felt before. From the north and east, fire pours in. From the air, bombs fall in columns. Communication trenches become shallow graves filled with rubble. The 35th Battery fires inland, plotting fields of fire more suited to ships at sea than infantry in ravines. Spotters send corrections over crackling lines. When the guns recoil, the whole underground shivers, dust falling in a light, constant rain. To the soldiers stationed there, the 35th Battery is more than a gun position. It is a lifeline for the southern sector, a hospital, a storehouse, a place where the day continues, in some facsimile, amid generators and field kitchens. But the battery is also a target, known to the attackers by map grid and reconnaissance photographs. By late June, its turrets are progressively disabled, auxiliary positions are hit, communications fray. The concrete was designed to resist fire from the sea. The heaviest artillery now hammers it from the land. In those last days of June, movement narrows to the south, toward Cape Chersoneso. Fields burn. The open areas are swept by machine gun fire. The remaining Soviet units, infantry, Marines, sailors, staff, and civilians fleeing the city, gather in wedges cut by ravines, clinging to folds of ground. At night, small boats and submarines slide in to evacuate staff and wounded. The lines of people stretch toward the shore and break into the water. Some get out, many do not. Inside the 35th Battery, discipline holds. Electricity still runs in sections. In other sections, men use lanterns and candle stubs balanced on broken shelves. The rooms are crowded. Staff officers and signalers, gun crews, medical personnel, cooks and clerks, runners, convalescents. Days blur between the steady impacts above and the shock of the guns when they can still fire. When the final orders arrive, destroy what cannot be carried, hold to the last, attempt evacuation, some try to slip out through emergency exits that open into ravines. Others remain in culverts and magazines, waiting for another boat that will not come. Surrender is a thing whispered about and put away. By early July 1942, Sevastopol has fallen. The last organized pockets on Cape Chersoneso go silent. The underground is pried open, room by room. Captivity follows for many. Some officers and small groups escape by sea. The city is occupied. The 35th Battery is a ruin, still a lattice of rooms and tunnels, but now filled with rubble and ash, its armored turrets silent. The defenders' endurance underground has been measured not in months, but in days and weeks. Fierce, desperate, illuminated by flares and electric bulbs that, in many sections, never fully went out until the end. So where does the number 170 come from? Where does the image of an underground garrison, trapped without light or water, stifled by gas, belong? Travel east to the Kerch Peninsula, May 1942. The Soviet bridgehead on the peninsula collapses under German attack. Thousands of soldiers and civilians fall back toward the city of Kerch. When they cannot evacuate, and most cannot, they vanish underground into the limestone labyrinth known as the Adzhimushkay quarries. The network is natural and man-made. Broad, white galleries where limestone has been carved in blocks for decades. These spaces are not purpose-built fortresses. They have no armored turrets, no steel doors, no engineered ventilation. They are caves, cool and spacious, cut by stonecutters' marks and riddled with shafts that let in thin light. In the first days, the underground swallows a city's worth of people. Estimates vary and are contested, ranging from a few thousand to over 10,000. They are soldiers with rifles and machine guns, gendarmes, clerks, medical staff, women, children, and the elderly. They bring whatever they can carry. Food is scarce from the start. Water is nearly absent. Limestone is dry. The shafts yield thin drips. Those trapped underground begin to dig wells with entrenching tools and bare hands, chasing the echo of moisture in rock. It takes days to reach groundwater. Buckets come up with milky liquid flecked with stone dust. Organization emerges because it must. Galleries become districts. Command posts form, makeshift headquarters with candles and a map tacked to timber. A crude infirmary appears, then two, then more. The sound of the outside war fades. A new war begins. Raids to bring back food from the surface at night. Brief skirmishes at entrance shafts. Attempts to block passages against incursions. And the routine of survival underground. Collection of condensation. Distribution of water according to strict ration. Sanitation in chalk pits. Guard posts marked only by a name scratched into stone. Above ground, German units set out to find and close the entrances. They collapse openings with explosives, wall them up with timber and stone, and set up observation points. When contact occurs, it is at a shaft where a voice echoes, or a single rifle shot flashes in the dark and is swallowed by the cave. The underground garrison, this is now what it is, exists outside the calendar of the surface. Children learn to walk by candlelight. Diaries are kept in pencil, then in charcoal. Rations diminish. The water is measured by capfuls. Gas appears in the testimonies. The record is not uniform. Some witness accounts describe gas grenades lowered into shafts, followed by smoke and burning lungs. Others recall foul air and choking without identifying a specific agent. The occupiers certainly experimented with driving the defenders out by making the air unbreathable. Smoke, irritants, and the sealing of ventilation holes to force suffocation. Precise identification of agents is contested. Some later accounts assert chemical irritants. Others describe smoke more generally. The effect, however, is clear. Defenders retreat deeper. Casualties mount in places where air does not move. The numbers change with time. In the first weeks, there's still sorties at night, small groups that break out to find food, water, medicine, and return with sacks of grain, tins, and sometimes nothing. As the blockade tightens, the balance tips toward endurance rather than action. Weapons break. Ammunition is nursed as if it were water. The chalk dust infiltrates everything: clothes, bandages, lungs. When torches fail, the dark is total, a physical thing that presses against the eyes. The figure we remember, approximately 170 days, measures this period from the collapse of the Kerch defense in May 1942 to the final clearing of the quarries in October. The last groups are dragged out, blinded by light, skeletal. Others are executed at the entrances. The underground city, its districts named, its rules drawn up in the long dusk, falls silent. It is here, in the Adzhimushkay quarries, that the iconic images of underground endurance, thirst, chalk-stained faces, gas and sealed shafts are most firmly documented. It is here, too, that later memory has sometimes grafted the words Sevastopol and battery onto quarry, mixing two Crimean stories into one. The people of Sevastopol had their own catacombs, workings and tunnels in the Inkerman quarries on the city's eastern side, cave monasteries and adits where both civilians and troops sheltered at times. But the fortress-like underground of the 35th Battery was an engineered military space. Its defenders fought from it, were battered within it and fell or were captured around it in the last days of the siege, not for 170 days, but within a compressed apocalyptic June and early July. Why does this matter? Because accuracy restores the human scale. The men and women at the 35th Battery faced an engineered hell of shock and fire, where concrete reverberated and turrets jammed. They moved through lit galleries that shook with the recoil of guns and collapsed under impacts measured by tons of TNT. The people in the Adzhimushkay quarries faced a different hell, drawn out and airless, where the enemy was not only the soldier at the blocked shaft, but the dry rock itself. To paint all of them with one brush, a generic lost battalion and a generic catacomb, does a disservice to both. Let us return for a moment to the battery. Imagine the last radio messages as the fronts collapse, clipped words, ranks, place names set to coordinates. Picture the emergency exits, narrow, angled corridors leading up to night air wrecked by burning storage and the smell of oil. Picture an officer, naval or army, holding a paper that authorizes the destruction of remaining stores, ensuring what cannot be evacuated will not be captured. Think about what people choose to carry when they enter the dark: a field Bible, a family photograph, a single apple wrapped in cloth for a wounded friend. The era's chroniclers, Soviet, German, Romanian, write in different languages and with different agendas, but when they describe people, the details converge: faces smeared with dust and soot, hands cut and swollen, a peculiar thrumming silence in your ears when you come up from underground into a bombardment so loud it erases itself. Now, return to the quarries. Imagine the slow arrival of understanding that the surface has moved on. The war continues, but you are no longer a front. You are an absence. The calendar is kept by scratches in stone. Children learn to be quiet when the air grows bad. Infirmary attendants bind wounds with cloth washed in chalky water. A commander draws a line through a district on a hand-drawn map. No entry, air exhausted. Outside, harvest comes and goes. Inside, someone tells a story in the dark to keep panic away. When raids for food succeed, there is a small celebration. When they fail, rations are cut and arguments burn like matches. When the quarries are finally overrun in October, the survivors emerge into sunlight like swimmers breaking the surface after too long underwater. Some are sent to camps. Some are shot at the entrances. Years later, when memorials are raised, the names are incomplete. The underground keeps its own silence. How do these stories meet after the war? They meet in the memories of those who survived and those who were told. They meet in museums, the reconstructed galleries of the 35th Battery near Cape Chersoneso, where visitors walk through corridors and machine rooms, and in the memorial complex at Adzhimushkay, where the limestone walls are inscribed with names and wells are marked in the floor. They meet in school books and veterans' assemblies, and, decades later, on the Internet, where short posts compress complex histories to a sentence and a number. Trapped underground for 170 days, the line goes, while the enemy used gas. True in the east at Kerch, not true for the battery at Sevastopol, whose underground ended with the city's fall. Some details remain debated. The precise number of people in the quarries is an estimate. The identities of all commanders and the chain of command underground are reconstructed from fragmentary accounts. The weaponization of gas is described in many testimonies, but not always with technical clarity. Descriptions range from smoke to asphyxiants. The last hours inside the 35th Battery, who left by which passage, who stayed, who negotiated surrender, appear differently in different memoirs. Where the sources disagree, we must say so. Where memory fills gaps, we must mark the join. But there is much we can say with confidence. We can trace the dates. The final assault on Sevastopol beginning June 7, 1942. Evacuation attempts from Cape Chersones in late June and early July. The fall of the city in early July. We can trace the months underground at Kerch from May to October 1942. We can mark the geography. The engineered galleries under the 35th Battery at Cape Chersones, the natural man-made labyrinth of limestone under Adzhimushkay. We can describe the conditions: electricity and machine rooms at the battery, chalk dust and dug wells in the quarries. We can acknowledge the civilians in both places: nurses, cooks, children, and the way war turns them into participants. Most of all, we can listen for the quiet beneath the noise of battles and dates. A soldier sits on a stone shelf and shares a cup of chalky water with a boy who has not spoken in days. A nurse ties a strip of linen around a wrist, writes a surname in pencil on the fabric, and moves on. A signalman folds a map with care, even though half the roads it shows are now trenches and the other half are blocked with wreckage. Someone in the dark counts slowly to 100 because breathing requires structure. Someone in a collapsing gallery under the 35th Battery feels the air change when a shaft cracks open and light knifes in. In the years after the war, the ruins endure. The sea continues to eat at the cape, the slabs of concrete slipping slowly toward the water. In Kerch, the white stone keeps its scars. Visitors stand in the cool underground and try to imagine heat elsewhere. On the surface in summer, in kitchens where taps give water without measurement. Guides speak in low voices. They point to carved letters and say, "Here is the name of a girl who turned 15 underground." They point to a mark in the wall and say, "Here is where they measured rations." They pause beneath a shaft and say, "Here the air moves." The phrase, "lost battalion," is both powerful and imprecise. It conjures disappearance, a group swallowed by the earth. In Crimea, in 1942, things did not disappear. They moved. They moved down and in, into galleries beneath a coastal battery designed to fight, and into quarries not designed for anything but stone. Each movement came with a choice: to endure, which is sometimes the only choice left. In telling the story this way, with the 35th Battery and the Adzhimushkay quarries side by side, we resist the simplicity of a single symbol. We honor the exact shape of two experiences. The defenders of the 35th Battery did not spend 170 days underground. And the underground city that did endure that long was not under Sevastopol's guns. Yet the people in both places shared a vocabulary forged from the same elements: darkness and light, air and its failure, thirst, and the small rituals by which humans remain human. If you listen closely, if you turn off the modern world and let the long echo of 1942 reach you, you may hear the underground speak. It speaks not of invincibility, but of persistence, not of myth, but of detail. A bucket, a candle, a scratched calendar, a hand on the shoulder in the dark that says, without words, I am here. And when you come back up into the light, into the wind off the Black Sea at Cape Chersonese, or the warm air above the fields at Adzhimushkay, you may find that the line between past and present is thinner than it seems. Beneath the ground are rooms where people choose, day after day, to keep being people. That, more than any single number or slogan, is what remains. The last images are simple. At Sevastopol, a silent, rusting steel ring where a gun turret once turned, the sea moving beyond it. A corridor beneath, empty now, where generator rooms smelled of oil and hot metal. At Kerch, a wellhead cut into chalk, its rope worn smooth. A name carved at shoulder height, the letters deep and careful, as if time might forget unless someone made it hurt to write. Both are true. Both belong to 1942. Both deserve to be remembered exactly as they were.